Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about the latest deal from Mike Lindell, MyPillow. Once again, the big box stores have canceled their orders simply because they don't agree with Mike Lindell's politics. They don't like it because he supports President Trump. Well, he's going to pass that savings on to you. No more middleman. And boy, does he have some great deals on the Giza Dream sheets and the Percal bed sheets. Listen to this. Giza Dream queen size, normally $139.98. Your wholesale price, $69.99 when you use promo code Joey. King size, only $79.99. The Percal queen size, normally $89.98. Your wholesale price, $29.98 when you use promo code Joey. Just call 1-800-893-4059 or go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. Free shipping options available. This allotment's not going to last very long. When they're gone, they're gone. mypillow.com. Promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. A new poll shows voters are split on the role that the United States should play in the world, while attitudes on the military action in Iran reflect strict party line options. We have the latest on a Fox News poll. A viral video showing an airport baggage handler tossing guitar cases roughly onto the tarmac at Los Angeles International Airport is sparking outrage online and larger concerns about how airlines may be handling passengers' belongings, including yours. A proposal requiring more than 24 law enforcement agencies in South Carolina to sign agreements with federal immigration officials has advanced to the House floor over Democrats' objections. We have an update on the effort to mandate the 287G program in the Palmetto State. One of the biggest frustrations you hear from small business owners across South Carolina isn't just about taxes, but the bevy of regulations the state throws at them. There are a couple of bills pending in the legislature that will eliminate a lot of these burdensome regulations. Dr. Orrin Smith with the Palmetto Promise Institute joins us today to talk about what you can do to help.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
6 Middle Eastern nations issued a joint statement yesterday condemning Iran's attacks across the region, warning them they reserved the right to defend themselves as tensions continue to escalate in the Middle East. The statement from the nations, the state of Qatar, the state of Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Bahrain, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan renew their condemnation in the strongest terms of the blatant Iranian attacks, which constitute a flagrant violation of their sovereignty, territorial integrity, international law, international humanitarian law, and the Charter of the United Nations, whether carried out directly or through their proxies and armed factions they support in the region, according to the statement. The statement specifically highlighted attacks carried out by Iran-linked armed factions operating from Iraq, targeting multiple countries in the region as well as key infrastructure in those nearby states. The statement said these acts are a breach of international laws and conventions and a blatant violation of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2817, which explicitly demands that Iran immediately and unconditionally cease any attacks or threats against neighboring states, including through the use of proxies. Now, the countries also turned their focus to Iraq, calling on its government to take immediate action to stop the attacks being launched from its territory by militias and armed groups. Additionally, the nations reaffirmed what they described as their full right to respond to the ongoing attacks under international law, quote, which guarantees the right of states to self-defense individually and collectively in the event of aggression, and our right to take all necessary measures to safeguard our sovereignty, security, and stability. The statement also warned of broader destabilization efforts tied to Iran-backed networks across the region. Meanwhile, President Trump says we are winning like we've never seen before.
We settled 8 wars, people sort of forget, and we're winning another one. I tell you, we're winning so big, nobody's ever seen anything like we're doing in the Middle East with Iran.
The president was addressing the GOP at the National Republican Congressional Committee's annual fundraising dinner. It was at Washington's Union Station as the party seeks to keep its majority through the November midterms. Yesterday, we told you about the 15-point peace plan that was presented to the Iranian leaders. According to the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, President Trump is ready to unleash, quote, hell if talks with Iran fall through. Yesterday, Tehran rejected the White House's 15-point peace plan. Fox's Alexandria Hoff at the White House reports.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt did not elaborate on a possible 15-point peace plan drawn by the U.S. and cautioned that early reports of the plan weren't entirely factual. According to Iranian state-run media, a U.S. proposal has been rejected and countered with 5 specific conditions, including Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, a vital shipping passage for much of the world's oil supply. Iran's foreign minister says Iran has no plans to negotiate. According to brand new Fox News polling, 58% of registered voters oppose current U.S. military action in Iran, with 44% feeling that the action will make the U.S. less safe in the long run.
Now, we'll get back to more of those poll numbers in just a minute. Meanwhile, the Pentagon says the U.S. is positioning ground-capable forces in the Middle East as Iran rejected a ceasefire proposal. This is a shift that gives Washington new, though limited and high-risk, options for potential operations inside of Iran. Military experts say the deployments are not a precursor to a large-scale invasion, but instead position the U.S. for targeted, short-duration missions, options that have taken on new relevance as diplomatic off-ramps seem to be narrowing. In recent days, the Pentagon has moved ground-capable forces into the region, including around 1,000 paratroopers with the Army's 82nd Airborne Division, among them the 1st Brigade Combat Team, a core component of the military's immediate response rapid response unit designed to deploy on a short notice to crisis anywhere in the world, along with a few thousand Marines and sailors assigned to the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit and its amphibious ready group led by the amphibious assault ship Tripoli. Marine Expeditionary Units and airborne forces often are among the first U.S. units deployed in a conflict designed to rapidly establish an initial presence and respond to emerging crises. Again, all of this according to the Pentagon. Now, back to that polling. Voters are split on what role the United States should be playing. 42% support the current U.S. military action against Iran. 58% oppose it now, including nearly 4 in 10 who are strongly opposed. The partisan divide is pretty stark. 77% of Republicans support the effort compared to 12% of Democrats and 28% of independents. Now, within the GOP, support ranges from 90% among MAGA supporters to 52% of those who consider themselves non-MAGA Republicans. The gender divide is less pronounced, with support at 38% among women, 45% among men. Support is tempered by doubts about the long-term outcome, as more voters believe it will make the United States less safer than safer. This 44% who believe it would be safer, as opposed to 33% who believe that we would not be. Another quarter think it won't make much difference either way. On the broader question of what U.S. foreign policy should be, half, 50%, say that the U.S. should be more engaged and take the lead in world events, while 48% prefer a less engaged, more reactive approach. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you think the U.S. needs to be more engaged in world affairs? Or do we need to take care of our own first? Do we need to take care of domestic issues? Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Leave me a message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and use promo code Joey when you go to MyPillow.com and take advantage of all the great deals that Mike Lindell has to offer. And boy, does he have some good ones for you. Let me give you some examples here. The MyPillow Classic, regular $49.98, now is only $17.98 when you use promo code Joey. Turn any mattress into the best mattress ever with the Made in the USA MyPillow mattress topper. You're going to think you have bought a brand new mattress. Get $100 off when you use promo code Joey. Again, call 800-893-4059 or go to MyPillow.com. Use promo code Joey. Now, back to the poll. On a partisan basis, Republicans favor engagement, 72%, while Democrats prefer a less engaged posture at 64%. Again, MAGA reporters are more pro-engagement at 80%, followed by voters who have served in the U.S. military at 70%. Voters largely agree that the most important U.S. objectives in Iran should be reducing its ability to support terrorism in the region, ending Iran's nuclear weapons program, and protecting the flow of oil from the region. A slim majority says the same about bringing about regime change at 53%. Some 64% of voters disapprove of how President Trump is handling Iran, up from 57% disapproval in January. On foreign policy, 62% disapprove, up from 60% last month as well. So it appears that the numbers are going in the wrong direction when it comes to what is happening in Iran. Again, love to hear from you. Text me, email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. Leave me a message on the MyPillow message line, 864-477-JOEY. GOP shots like Ozempic are everywhere right now, but here's the question. What happens when you stop? If you don't fix the reason your body gained weight in the first place, the weight comes back. Joey Hudson here at PhD Weight Loss. They don't just treat the weight as the problem. They treat it as a symptom of metabolic dysfunction, hormone imbalance, or inflammation. If you don't correct those, no shot or hack will ever last. PhD looks at you holistically to improve your health span, your energy, and your longevity, because losing weight is one thing, but keeping it off for life is another. Right now, when you call PhD Weight Loss and mention Joey Hudson, you'll receive 2 free weeks in the program, and they'll cover the cost of your food. That's real results with zero guesswork. Again, mention Joey Hudson when you call 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900. Visit them online at myphdweightloss.com. Stop chasing weight. Start fixing what actually is causing it. Call today. Be sure and tell them Joey Hudson sent you. Get your 2 free weeks in the program. 864-644-1900. A proposal requiring more than 24 law enforcement agencies in South Carolina to sign agreements with federal immigration officials has advanced to the House floor over the objections of the Democrats. Here's a story. So what happens when local law enforcement in South Carolina is asked, and not suggested, but required, to work hand in hand with federal immigration authorities? Is it about public safety? Or is it about something more? Because right now, debate is heating up in Columbia that could reshape how policing works across our state. And depending on who you ask, it's either a long overdue step towards law and order or a dangerous move that could fracture trust in local communities. So let's break it down here. There's a bill moving through South Carolina, the legislature, that would require dozens of law enforcement agencies, specifically those who operate overnight jails, to participate in what's known as the 287G program. We've talked a lot about this program over the last several years. And here's what it means in plain English. Local officers would be authorized to cooperate directly with federal immigration officials, checking the immigration status of individuals already in custody and potentially helping enforce federal immigration laws. This isn't new nationally. Again, it's been part of the discussion for a number of years now. But making it mandatory statewide, that's where things get a little bit interesting. The bill's already cleared a key hurdle, passing out of the House Judiciary Committee on a party line vote. And with nearly 50 Republican co-sponsors, including leadership in the House, it's expected to pass the full House. So, barring surprises, this thing is moving pretty quickly. Supporters say it's about something very simple: safety. The safety of the community that these officers and these agencies protect. They argue that when someone's already in jail, already arrested, it makes sense to check whether that person also has a federal immigration issue. And if they do, why wouldn't local authorities cooperate? It's just common sense, isn't it? The bill sponsor put it this way: if someone is already in custody, running their information through a federal database is not unreasonable. I tend to agree. And from that perspective, it's kind of hard to argue with this, right? You've got individuals already arrested, sometimes for very serious crimes, and in some cases, they may also have outstanding removal orders. Why wouldn't you want to know that? Supporters say ignoring that reality doesn't make communities safer. It makes them more vulnerable. But then you have the pushback on the other side. Opponents say that this isn't just about criminals. They worry about unintended consequences. Well, what are those consequences? Well, they argue that requiring local police to partner with federal immigration enforcement could create fear in certain communities, particularly immigrant communities. And when people are afraid of law enforcement, they say, they're less likely to report crimes. less likely to cooperate, less likely to come forward when something goes wrong. That's a real concern, and one that's been raised in cities across the country when trying to argue that this is not a good thing. Some lawmakers are warning this could undo years of building trust between police and the communities they serve. I say to that, it's not a valid argument. It makes no sense to have someone in custody, again, who's already committed a crime and not check their immigration status. Because if they're in the country illegally, they need to be deported immediately when they're breaking additional laws, right? Now, there's also the question of resources. Not every department in South Carolina is large or well-funded. Some are small. They're already stretched thin, doing everything they can to meet day-to-day responsibilities, they say. So lawmakers added a provision, an off-ramp, if you will. If a department can prove that participating in the program would create a financial burden, they can be exempt. That's an acknowledgement that one-size-fits-all policies don't always work at the local level. Now, again, I don't know why even a small agency would not want to cooperate, would not want to know that that person they have in their jail is also wanted for immigration violations. But hey, if it's going to cost them, I get that. But let's step back. Let's look at the bigger picture here. It's part of a much larger national conversation about immigration enforcement. You've got ongoing debates in Washington. You've got tensions between federal and state priorities. And you've got communities across the country trying to figure out how to balance compassion, law enforcement, and public safety all in the same conversation. South Carolina is now stepping directly into that conversation. Some agencies in the state are already participating in the program. Counties like Horry and York have had agreements in place for years, and they've been cited in federal reports involving serious criminal cases. So for supporters, this is not theoretical. It's already happening in some areas. The argument is simply, if it works in some places, why not expand it statewide? But critics say expansion changes the equation. Voluntary participation is one thing, a mandate is something else entirely, they say, and that's where the tension lies. There's also a political layer here that you can't ignore. Republicans are framing this as a response to what they see as failures in other parts of the country, particularly the so-called sanctuary policies. They argue that stronger cooperation between local and federal agencies help prevent dangerous situations before they escalate. Again, I tend to agree with that. The Democrats, though, are raising concerns about civil liberties, racial profiling, and the broader implications of tying local policing to federal immigration enforcement. So, yes, it's about policy, but it's also about the role of local law enforcement. They're there to keep communities safe. And you can ask the question, where do you draw the line between state and federal authority? If you got them in jail because, let's say, they ran a red light and involved in a traffic accident and they were driving an unregistered vehicle with no license, so you lock them up. They broke the law. Well, they're also guilty of entering our country illegally too. What's the difference? Don't you want to be sure that they are held responsible for breaking that law as well? There's one more wrinkle here too. Even as this debate unfolds at the state level, there are signs of increased federal immigration activity right here in South Carolina. New ICE facilities, expanded operations, more coordination behind the scenes. All of it suggests that this issue isn't going to go away anytime soon, and I hope it doesn't. So where does this leave us? Well, the bill is likely headed for a vote in the full House. After that, it moves over to the Senate, where things are a little bit less certain. But one thing is clear. The conversation is just getting started here. And as it unfolds, it's worth keeping one question front and center. Can you strengthen enforcement without weakening trust? And are you concerned about the trust in the community that you're probably never going to have anyway? Because if you're an immigrant and you're in the country illegally, are you ever going to trust law enforcement? I think not. In the end, public safety matters. Community trust matters, yes. Finding the right balance, that is the challenge that law enforcement is facing right now. On the text line, texter says, if midterms is anything like special elections in Florida, rhinos are in trouble. So they sure need to start changing their messaging and doing more town halls. That's from Tony. Thank you, Tony. Faye says, I watch Real America's Voice for nightly news. Data has now been found that Biden was being told that the COVID shots were harmful and causing strokes. Data told how many thousands died the day the shot was received. Americans were lied to by the Biden regime. Senator Ron Johnson has been fighting this battle for 5 years and finally getting to the truth. Thank you, Faye. Texter says, Joey, the TSA agents are not walking out on their job. The Democrats basically have laid them off. Good point. Look, the whole TSA issue is at a boiling point. Transportation Secretary Administration officers working without pay, combined with staffing shortages and long hours during the Department of Homeland Security shutdown. According to Greg Borick, he is with the American Federation of Government Employees and a TSA officer. These long hours have pushed airport operations to a breaking point, according to this union steward. The partial breakdown, now in its 6th week, has left roughly 100,000 TSA employees working without full pay since mid-February amid a political standoff in Washington by a bunch of politicians. Now, at the same time, President Trump has deployed paid ICE agents to assist at airports, a move intended to ease pressure on TSA. It's been criticized by the unions who say agents lack screening training. However, according to a CNN report yesterday, it has helped in the Atlanta Hartsfield International Airport. If you missed that segment, find it on my YouTube channel. I did a whole segment on it yesterday. You had a CNN reporter in Atlanta Hartsfield International Airport, and he was just simply shocked that that the lines were no longer there after ICE agents showed up to help out. So just check out my YouTube channel, and you'll see that. And, hey, by the way, while you're there, be sure and subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. I'm trying to build my my audience on YouTube. We have a lot of fun. We're building a community there, and I want you to be part of that community. Now, this George Borick with the American Federation of Government Employees, he appeared on National Report on Newsmax yesterday, described the growing strain on frontline workers who have now missed multiple paychecks. He said, we go to work with expectation that we're going to get paid every 2 weeks, which has not happened. So certainly I have to make choices for myself and my family and what I can do and cannot do. Borick said many officers are approaching what is effectively their third missed full paycheck, with some initially receiving only partial pay due to the timing of the shutdown. He said, it's sad to say that we've been thrust into something that is of not our own doing. Our employees want to come to work. They want to do their job. We're not asking for a raise. We just want our paycheck. And that's fair enough, isn't it? It's fair enough to expect to be paid. The financial toll has been severe, with workers reporting maxed out credit cards, eviction risk, and difficulty affording basic necessities. Conditions echoed in national reports of TSA employees relying on food banks or literally sleeping in their cars. And look, we don't want that. We don't want that for anybody. Borick said the staffing shortage is already affecting operations in Atlanta, one of the nation's busiest airports. Now, the Los Angeles International Airport finds itself in the spotlight as a baggage claim handler there has gone viral in a video. So I've got a question for you. Have you ever stood at a baggage claim in an airport watching that carousel go around and wondered, what in the world happened to my bag before it got here? Well, now, we may have an answer, because a viral video out of Los Angeles International Airport is pulling back the curtain. And folks, what it shows has a lot of Americans shaking their heads. So here's the story. A college student, 21-year-old Nick Ruiz, captured video on his phone. He's walking through Terminal 4, just another day, right? But then he spots something that just doesn't sit right. Out on the tarmac, an airport baggage handler, not gently loading luggage, not carefully placing equipment, but tossing guitar cases one after another like they're gym bags after practice, just throwing them. And these aren't cheap items, folks. We're talking about instruments that cost thousands of dollars, some of them one of a kind, and some with years, maybe decades of personal history attached to them. If you've ever played guitar, you know what I'm talking about. This video hit social media and boom, it exploded. Millions of views, thousands of comments, a lot of shares, and a lot of people saying the same thing. Now, I know my baggage shows up broken. Musicians especially, they're not just frustrated, they're emotional, because a guitar isn't just an object, it's an investment. It's a tool. It's, for many, a piece of their identity. One commenter put it bluntly, that's $3,000 worth of gear being treated like trash. Another said, as a musician, this breaks my heart. And you know what? That sentiment is spreading far beyond musicians. Now, here's where the story takes a turn because a travel expert, Gary Leff, weighs in. And what he says might surprise you. He looks at the video and says, essentially, this may look shocking, but it's not unusual. Now, think about that for a minute. Not unusual? According to him, this kind of baggage handling happens more often than airlines would want to admit. And sure, when a video goes viral, airlines come out and say, this is unacceptable, we're looking into it. But behind the scenes, this may be closer to the norm than the exception. Now, if that's true, it raises a pretty uncomfortable question. Are we trusting airlines with things they were never really designed to protect? Because here's the reality. Checked baggage systems are built for speed, for volume, for efficiency, not necessarily for delicate handling. Now, Mr. Leff points out something very important here. Bags are designed to protect what's inside them. In other words, the burden falls on you, not the airline. Now, to be fair, the U.S. Department of Transportation does have rules. Airlines are required to accommodate musical instruments. You can carry them on if they'll fit, or you can even buy a separate seat for them. Yeah, a seat for your guitar if it's that valuable. Now, they recommend labeling it fragile if you're going to check it. Here's the million-dollar question. After watching that video, do you really think a fragile sticker changes anything? Let's just talk common sense for a minute. It takes the same amount of effort, maybe less, to gently place that case down on the buggy as it does to throw it. So why the rough handling? Is it time pressure, staff shortages, lack of training, or maybe it's just something simpler, a system that's gotten so big so fast that accountability it slipped through the cracks? And this is why this story is resonating, because it's not just about guitars. It's about the trust we put in the airlines when we hand over our luggage. You pay hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars to travel. You hand over your belongings and you expect a basic level of care, right? Maybe not perfection, just basic respect. But more and more Americans feel like that expectation is no longer being met. So what do we do with this? Well, first, if you're traveling with anything valuable, think twice before you check it. Carry it on if you can. Ship it separately if you have to, because once it disappears behind the conveyor belt, you're rolling the dice. Second, this is a reminder that transparency matters, because without that video, we're not even having this conversation. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just what happened on that tarmac in Los Angeles, but what it revealed about a system millions of Americans rely on every single day, and will be doing so in the coming weeks as we go into the summer vacation season. Sometimes it takes a 30-second video to expose a much bigger problem. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Furman Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Furman Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Furman Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Furman, Matthew Furman. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Furman Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Furman Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Furman Ford online at furmanford.com, furmanford.com. One of the biggest frustrations you quite often hear from small business owners across South Carolina, in addition to taxes, of course, is regulation. Rules coming out of state agencies that can shape entire industries, often without a direct vote from the people you elected to represent you. Well, that could be changing. The South Carolina legislature is now considering the Small Business Regulatory Freedom Act, a move supporters say will restore accountability, put some major regulatory decisions back where they belong. in the hands of elected lawmakers. Joining us to break it all down, Dr. Orrin Smith, Senior Fellow with the Palmetto Promise Institute, an organization that's been at the forefront of pushing this kind of reform. Dr. Smith, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to be with you to talk about this key issue.
Yeah. All right, so let's just start. What exactly is included in the Small Business Regulatory Freedom Act? Is House Bill 3021 and Senate Bill 254, and what problems would this legislation solve here in South Carolina?
Well, there've been a number of surveys of South Carolina's regulatory environment, South Carolina's regulatory laws, and it has been determined that South Carolina has a lot of extra regulations that tend to burden small businesses. The state legislature on the House side for H 3021 heard a lot of testimony from folks that have small businesses, and it may require them to move from agency to agency, picking up various permits to allow them to conduct their business. When it just becomes so burdensome, they spend most of their time trying to keep up with the regulations. But the answer to this is the Small Business Regulatory Freedom Act, which in the House was 3021 and the Senate 254. It actually passed the South Carolina House 111 to nothing, and it actually seeks to meet certain goals, to reduce the number of regulatory requirements by 25%. By every time a new regulation is proposed, get rid of two. Look at the cost of the regulations over a certain number of years, typically 5 years, and anything that would cost the economy $1 million or more over 5 years would have to have a special treatment and special analysis so that the legislature would be aware of that. So there are a lot of different functions, a lot of different pieces to it, but the goal is reducing the regulatory burden. And there seemed to be momentum when the House passed it 111 to nothing, but it now is in the Senate. And there have been four hearings on the Senate side, but no activity yet in the Senate.
111 to nothing. Now, that's something you don't see often.
No, particularly in this environment that we're in, because you've really got three groups in the South Carolina House. You've got the Republican caucus, the Democratic caucus, and the Freedom caucus. Mm-hmm. And they all have different ideas about how legislation should flow and are not sheepish about saying what they believe. And 111 to nothing. It's kind of surprising. Representative Jeff Bradley from the Low Country was the one who was driving that process over in the House and did a really good job bringing all the groups together.
Yeah. Dr. Smith, kind of break this down for us. What does this mean in practical terms for the average South Carolinian, or what could it potentially mean?
Yeah, I think if there are literally fewer regulations on the books, there is more freedom and there's less responsibility for doing nothing as a business but keeping track of regulations. And, one thing that we've determined just in our unofficial perusal of the regulations that exist here in South Carolina, there in many cases they simply take the law and they copy the law into the regulations, which really involves no light, no guidance. It just duplicates the law and creates additional words, additional paragraphs, additional regulations, and sometimes causes some confusion. We've also found that many of the regulations are almost laughable because of how dated they are. Like one regulation says that if you have a public swimming pool, then you have to have a payphone or a landline phone somewhere nearby in case there is an emergency. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, that clearly indicates the entire code needs to be examined, but there's got to be a starting place.
Yeah.
There's got to be a way to begin this process. And what's kind of interesting for us, and I know that your listenership is very much oriented toward the entire state, but the upstate in particular, and Jim DeMint, when he was in the U.S. House back in the old days, back in 2010, he introduced a bill that in many ways is the model for this South Carolina legislation in 2026.
Yeah.
It was called the REINS Act. and REINS basically stood for reducing regulations. And he was a champion along with Ron Paul and a number of other co-sponsors back in the day. They just felt that regulations needed to justify their existence.
Yeah.
And it's kind of amazing that something Jim DeMint did back then to kind of come back.
Yeah. Dr. Orrin Smith is my guest today. He's a senior fellow with the Palmetto Promise Institute. I saw a letter that Senator DeMint had sent to the members of the South Carolina General Assembly, encouraging them to take action. He mentioned that small businesses feel the weight of regulation most of all. Is there a specific example that you could give us that this law would change and have an effect on a day-to-day basis for a small business owners, other than the payphone at a swimming pool? I mean, can you even get a payphone anymore?
Oh, I don't know. Those things were built like tanks, though. Remember?
Yes.
I think in some cases there's just inconsistency and duplication, and it would seek to push back against that, so that there would be more of a. I mean, the ultimate goal would be more of a one-stop shop for a small business, and the state government has worked in that direction, but more can be done in that area. I mean, there was a person that gave testimony who essentially operated a farm, and they had chickens and they had eggs and they had a certain kind of plants and various things that they sold, and different parts of that farm operation required different permits from different agencies. So. Yeah. And when you say small businesses really struggle, I think that's because a larger business may have a compliance department. They may have lawyers. They may have people to fill out government forms and that know these regulations by heart. In some cases, they might have had some role in writing them. But the average small business where the owner is also the cashier and the advertising department and everything. Yep. There just isn't that bandwidth to do that. And small businesses are the backbone of South Carolina's economy, and they need to be protected.
Yeah. Now, it's my understanding, and just kind of looking at the surface of this, South Carolina does have some regulatory review laws on the books. Is there something, maybe kind of give us a review of that, what's missing up to this point, and with the bill, would it add more enforcement, more accountability? Is there going to be a process that would be used to review these regulations that maybe have been on the books for decades and people have just forgotten about?
Well, as a part of this process and reading this legislation when it was filed, I was a little surprised at how good, or my perception was how good the current law was. But this organization, or this panel that we currently have in South Carolina, that's really kind of outside of the legislature, it's more within the Department of Commerce, that is charged with reviewing regulations for their impact upon business. I've been around state government and studied South Carolina government for a long time. I don't remember ever seeing on the state legislative website a meeting notice that the small business committee was going to be meeting. Turns out the committee actually does meet, but no one is really aware that it's meeting. And the agenda of that meeting is not always easy to find on the state website, and certainly making a complaint about the impact of legislation on your business to that entity is convoluted and confusing. So, the good side of it is we do have a pretty good history of getting this process started. It's just it doesn't have enough teeth. It doesn't have enough specificity. And this law, this new bill, would fill out or fill in the gaps of that and give it some teeth and make it more enforceable.
Yeah. Dr. Smith, I can see how critics might say that this would potentially slow down necessary regulations. How do you balance that, protecting public safety, protecting businesses, while also limiting overreach?
Well, I think the way that this bill is drafted, it really does a good job of covering that basis as well. There are pathways for regulations that are essential, that are important, that relate to some federal purpose of which the state doesn't have much authority, those kinds of things. That's factored into it. There's also factored into it the whole idea of pushing back against Chevron deference. That is something that we've never really put on the books adequately in South Carolina, and that is to say that we don't, in judicial proceedings or administrative proceedings, either one in South Carolina, we don't defer to the state agency for the interpretation of the regulation. And we've had a case, federal case that solved some problems with that, but we don't have that in South Carolina law. Otherwise, we have this Chevron doctrine out there that says agencies should be deferred to by courts. So we if nothing else, we've got to fix that for sure. And that's a part of this bill as well, thankfully.
Yeah. What do other states do? Is there a comparison of how South Carolina potentially handles this versus, say, some of our neighboring states, North Carolina, Georgia?
Well, one way of determining what the situation is in other states is to simply count the number of regulations. And in some cases, South Carolina is right with our neighboring states, but also some states that are pretty close by us have taken up this second round of regulatory reform and have acted in this way. So the path forward really is to look for how we can enact some permanent reforms in this area so we don't have to continue to keep coming back to it, and that we don't get left behind from states who have done very, very well at this and are known to be states that are not allowing overregulation, because there are a lot of things that go into economic development. One, of course, is tax rates, incentives, the taxes on individuals as well as commercial property taxes, this type of thing. But also the regulatory environment is key to a lot of decisions. So I think all of these things need to be taken into account so we can be the most business-friendly and family business-friendly state in the country.
Yeah. Dr. Orrin Smith with the Palmetto Promise Institute is with us today. So where does this stand now? What's the next step in the legislative process?
Well, I think we've counted that we're in about week number 11 of the legislative session here as we're starting to round out March. So we have all of April and just a week or 10 days in May, and then the second year of the 2-year session is over. So all legislation would die. So what we're hoping is that there can be something passed out of the Senate. Right now, it's in a subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. So if we can get it out of this subcommittee into the full committee and get it out on the floor and get it debated, even if there are some amendments or changes, then that would give the House time to decide if they want to accept those changes or if they want to go to a conference committee. But pretty soon, I think either the House or the Senate's probably going to take a week off for a furlough. They normally do that. The House took last week off. Mm-hmm. And if they do that, that's going to reduce the number of legislative days even further. We don't really have crossover deadlines anymore. If we did, this bill would have already cleared the deadline. But it's just tight. The legislative calendar is full. The committee hearings calendars are full this time of year. So it gets a little scary if you're hoping for this kind of regulatory relief to be looking at that end of session and saying, "Oh my goodness, we could lose 2 years if we don't get something done in the next couple of weeks."
Sure. What could our listeners do to help this process?
I think if our listeners are interested in this bill, they should take a look at either the House or the Senate version. Unfortunately, they're linked. If you go to scstatehouse.gov, you can look up the bill number. Again, it's 3021 in the House, and it's 254 in the Senate. You can also take a look there, and it'll have the members of the Judiciary Committee. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy to take a look there. And just if you know your senator, you would know immediately whether your senator is on the Judiciary Committee or not. The interesting thing about the South Carolina Senate and committee assignments is the senators are divided 23 and 23. There are 23 on the Judiciary Committee and 23 on the Finance Committee.
Mm-hmm.
So your senator has a 50-50 chance of being on Judiciary, or you may know a senator who may not exactly be your senator, but may be a senator you know who is on Judiciary. So take a look at that list of Judiciary Committee members.
Okay.
See if you know somebody and put in a request and say, I'd really like to see you take that up.
Encourage them to put this out for a full vote and pass it and send it to Governor McMaster to sign. Dr. Orrin Smith, it's always a pleasure. You can find out additional information. This is one of many issues that Palmetto Promise is working on. Go to palmettopromise.org, palmettopromise.org. Dr. Smith, always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, as always.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Furman Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.